Hey guys, we are here. I'm Sensei James Wall along with Sensei John King, and we're going to be going over the techniques for semester 3 of our senior judo curriculum. In this case, that happens to be the months of May, June, July, and August. So we're going to start off with throwing techniques. Let's get right into that. Alright, our first technique is tomoe-nage, the circle throw. Some folks also call it the stomach throw. We typically say the circle throw. Pretty popular throw with kids and with adults. We'll show just kind of a standard version of it from here. So, from my judo grip, with my right foot forward, I'm going to bring my left foot up close so that my right foot can move up to his hip. And I'm putting my heel pointing in and my toes pointing outward like that, right on his hip here. Now what I want to do is have my left leg actually swing almost like a pendulum, and I want to try to have my leg go through his legs and my rear end land as close and as deep underneath him as possible so I can take him straight over. What I don't want to do is fall backward. I lose a lot of the power and the rotation of the throw if I just fall back. It's much easier for him to counter it if I fall back. So I want to move forward. So the foot goes into position, got my grip here, the left leg is going to go through, and I'm going to throw him over like that. So for this throw, we could throw and release, or we could throw, keep our grip, and actually follow into a pinning technique up top. And that's a pretty common way you see it done in a lot of competitions. Next throw is Tani Otoshi, the valley drop. We have this two different times in this semester. The first version here, which is for all students in this semester, is using Tani Otoshi as a counter technique when our opponent turns their back to us, maybe to throw us with ogoshi or kubinagi or koshiguruma, even ipponsei nagi. Anytime they're turning their back to us, trying to throw us forward, there's an opportunity for us to throw Tani Otoshi. So let's see the throw. We'll talk about it after that. Alright, so what happens here is my opponent moves forward and turns his body, and he wants to throw me forward. So there's a period of time where his body and his momentum and power are moving in this direction. I don't want to wait until he makes the change and has me moving forward. It's going to be too late then, okay? What I want to do is try to catch his power as it comes in. And I like to think about trying to make a T, where my opponent's body is the leg of the T, and I'm the top of the T. With my left hand, I might grab his lapel. I might just reach across and grab his gi by his ribs. I could grab his belt. I could even just hug him. So anything you want to grab, anything that feels good and comfortable for you, that's okay. So I'll get my grip. My left leg is going to go out straight, and I want it to drop as close to his heels as possible. What I don't want to do is put my leg into his knees. So this is not a reaping throw of any kind, and that's one way that people really get hurt, is when the guy puts the legs in the knee. You can hurt his knees, you can hurt his feet. So let's have our leg just drop right behind him. The way I tell the kids, imagine it's a stick, and you're putting a stick behind their feet, and you're going to push them over. I want to fall, it is a sacrifice throw, and I want to land on my side, and I want to steer my opponent to land on his back. So the leg goes down behind him, I fall, and turn here. So he's on his back, and I'm on my side. So that's Tani Otoshi, the valley drop, in this case using it as a counter technique. In our curriculum it'll say versus ogoshi, the large hip throw, but it can be any forward type throw. Alright, next throw is sekiue-nage, the scooping throw. You don't see this throw very often in competition, but it is a pretty neat throw. We can use it in freestyle judo, you could use it in Brazilian jiu-jitsu or grappling. It can be really good for competition, also a pretty good self-defense technique if the opponent has you like in a kind of in a headlock. Let's turn around just a little bit. So we'll start from a gripping position. So for me to work this, what I would need to do is actually drive through the middle, breaking his grip. So I might use the drive to break his grip, or maybe I perform a grip break here first and then take that as an opportunity to step in. My left arm is going right across his hips and belt, and I'm going to grab behind his thigh. My right hand is going to reach and grab right behind his other thigh or behind his two knees. And then I'm going to lift him up and just dump him over backwards. I'm going to scoop him up. So here we go. Now, like I mentioned, we also sometimes teach this in one of our self-defense techniques. If the bad guy has me like in a bulldog headlock, like this, if I can get my left arm in front, I can do Tsukuinage, a scooping throw, really easily. All right, next throw is Marote Seiyonage, the two-hand or two-arm shoulder throw. So we'll show a couple different ways to use the grip on this. This throw, it can be difficult for some people, particularly tall people, people with long arms, or maybe if you have some shoulder problems. So there are some different grips you can use to make it a little bit easier. Just like any of our shoulder throws, you want to be sure that you're bending your knees. You don't want to try to lift with just back muscles and shoulder muscles. You're going to hurt yourself. So when we do Ippon Seiyonage, the one-arm shoulder throw, my right arm releases the grip, travels across, and goes under real deep. For Marote Seiyonage, I'm going to keep that grip. So I'm going to have the lapel grip here, and I like to grab not low, but not as high as I normally would. So normally I would grab up here by his collarbone. For Marote Seiyonage, I might grab a little more here by his chest, kind of right in the center of his chest. So instead of releasing the grip, I'm going to hold it, and as I lift him up, I'll let my arm come across. So now my elbow and forearm are underneath his armpit. I want to rotate so both my feet are close together, and I've got very little space between me and him. Bend my knees, lift, and then throw. So again, very similar to Ippon Seiyonage, but instead of our whole arm coming across, it's going to be our forearm and elbow here. Now, another real easy modification, if you find a lot of difficulty with that position, is instead of holding the standard lapel, to reach across and grab fingers in on the opposite side. Make sure you have a little bit of slack. So some people find that that makes it easier to make this transition. Everything else is the same. I want to have good posture, not leaning or bending over, but bending the knees, lifting with the legs, and then rotating through with the hands. So we want to do it that way, again, not to put pressure on our shoulder and back muscles. If you find yourself feeling like this, like you're being pulled backwards and your back is arched and bent, your posture and position are all off. You want to get close, bend the knees, and get underneath, just like that. All right, so those are the 4 throws for everyone this semester. Now, our advanced ranks, this will be brown belts and above. We have 3 additional techniques for you guys to work on. The first one is going to be a variation of Tomonagi. It's Yoko Tomonagi, the side circle throw. Like all of our throws, and like I've said in previous videos, there are many different variations. We're just showing 1 or 2 basic versions you guys can use. Advanced players, feel free to experiment with these. Try different grips. Try going in different directions, different angles of off balance. It's okay to modify these techniques to fit your body type, your size, your strength level, your skill level, as long as the basic technique is still recognizable. So, we did Tomonagi earlier, and I went underneath him and threw him straight over behind me. So, when I throw Yoko Tomonagi, side circle throw, I want my opponent not to go straight over, but rather to go sideways. So it could be throwing in this direction, or it could be throwing in that direction. And for me, the rule of thumb that I go by is, whichever foot I lift, that's the direction my opponent's going to go in. So if I put my right foot on his hip, I'm going to make him go that way. If I were to put my left foot up, I want to make him go that way. So the first version I'm going to show is going to be using the right foot, and my opponent's going to go in that direction. So I've got my power hand grip. Again, I'm going to bring my left foot up, then my right foot comes up here. Everything so far is exactly like the Tomonagi you saw earlier in this video. But now, instead of me going straight underneath, I'm going to basically do a side fall. So I want my body sideways and my head pointing in that direction. So I've got my grip and I fall sideways here. So that would be a right-sided Yoko Tomonagi. Now we can do the same technique with the left side, and one advantage here is if I have a right-sided grip and I throw to the left, I can make it very hard for him to post because I have a grip on this hand. You could also take a double sleeve grip and then choose either side. But But if I've got my standard grip and I brought my left foot up, then my head is going to fall in the left direction and I'm going to throw him that way. So I fall sideways and throw like so. So Yoko Tomonagi, a pretty neat variation, probably maybe the more common one that you see in competition, if not the more common, at least as common these days as the standard Tomonagi. Next variation, or next throw I should say, is Yoko Wakari. This is the side separation, and this is a technique that Sensei John does especially well, much better than I do, and so I've asked him if he wouldn't mind to demonstrate and explain this technique. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Sensei John.
Thank you, Sensei James. So Yoko Wakari, the side separation. The setup is very similar to that for Ippon Seoinage, where we have our right foot forward. We may have a sleeve or a lapel grip. It can also be thrown left foot forward with a lapel grip here. And this happens to be my preference, right? Opposite stance, it can be thrown to either side. So at this point, I want to make sure I have the dominant grip. I must have the inside grip. It's okay for your opponent to have the outside. We're not worried about that. So what we're going to do now is go forward, is advance forward, kind of leaping into the air and rotating away from his side so we're face down on the mat. So we'll take a quick look at that here. So we're going to enter first. So we're going to enter here in this position. Remember, you're pulling up and out to get this off balance. So we'll go ahead and throw it and then take a look at a finer point. And so this is a throw where you have to be 100% committed. If you go slow, they're going to sprawl and you're just going to land on your back and they're going to take you. And so when you throw this throw, whether it be from here, from the standard Ippon Seoinage entry, or from the same side lapel grip, make sure that you commit 100% and go to your back. So one more time, watch as my right foot advances through this throw to here. And then I'm going to drop as I rotate to my stomach and pull uke over.
Thank you, Sensei John. So that's Yoko Wakari, side separation, excellent technique. Another example of a sacrifice throw. We have a lot of sacrifice throws in this particular semester. That's kind of one of the focuses for this semester. Last technique is Tanio Toshi, technique we saw earlier in the video. In this case, instead of doing it as a counter technique, we're going to use it as an attacking throw. And what we're saying in this example is using a cross grip. So what we mean by cross grip is either I intercept my opponent's hand as he tries to grip me, or my opponent has gripped me and I have performed a grip break. So in either case, I have control of this hand and I'm going to pull it across the front of my body. Now I hope that I manage to turn my opponent completely sideways. I may not be quite that successful. Maybe I only turn him a little bit, and that's okay, because again, we've exposed his rear half, okay? And now I can start to see that T shape I talked about earlier develop. So if we only get a little bit of a turn, it's okay. Our left leg and left arm are going to both move simultaneously. I can't wait until he steps back and recovers his balance, okay? It's too late then. He's probably wise to what I'm going to do, and I'll have to do something different. So as I break his balance and get a little bit of a turn, my left leg is going to shoot right behind his heels, and my left hand is going to grab, and I'm going to throw the Tanio Toshi. Everything else about the throw is exactly the same. Leg goes right behind his heels. Don't put your leg into his knees. Grip the collar, grip the belt, grip the back, his patch, grip all the way across underneath his opposite armpit. Wherever you can grab is fine. And remember, with Tanio Toshi, we always want to fall on our side, never our back. If I fall to my back and he falls to his back, it's up to the referee to decide who actually got the throw. But if I fall to my side and I'm driving him to his back, it's usually very clear that it was my throw. And even if not, worst case scenario, he gets a 2-point throw, or maybe a Yuko if it's IJF rules, not Ippon, so we're still in the action. All right, so that's our throwing techniques for this semester. Okay, we're going to now cover the counters, defenses, and combinations for semester 3 of our senior judo curriculum. So, First technique here is my opponent attempts a Morote Seoinage, or a two-hand shoulder throw, and I'm just going to execute what's called a hip block or a hip twist block. I've heard it called a lot of different things, but I think of it as a hip block or hip twist block. So instead of using my hand to stop him, I'm just going to rotate my hip and kind of pop it in place. So we'll see it from both sides. So he comes in for this Morote Seoinage. What I want to do is use my hip and actually just rotate and kind of pop his hip here, like that. Now, I don't really want to stay behind him, so usually I like to block and then use that sort of as a rebound effect to block and then go ahead and get out of that position real quick. We'll see it from here. So this is my left hip, in this case, is back. So I have to sort of know what's going on there. I realize he's coming in for this Morote Seoinage, but I don't want to stick around here. He may still be able to pull this off and actually float me over his hip. So I want to block and move. So block, move, and get out of that bad spot. Don't stay in his hips. All right, our next one is for our advanced players, and it's going to be a failed tomonagi to a technique called ashigarami, a leg entanglement. So we see this technique done in the katami no kata in our judo syllabus, and it's done to either a knee lock or a hip lock. Remember that in competition judo, even in freestyle judo, we don't do leg locks, knee locks, ankle locks, or hip locks. So we could use this as sort of a guard takedown or guard sweep, but we would not want to execute any locking of any of his lower extremities, no knee or ankle or hip locks. So what happens here is I go for tomonagi, but I don't get it. Maybe I don't get quite enough off balance, maybe I don't go deep enough underneath, and he's able to sort of step forward just a bit and ride it out, and then he tries to stand back up, but I still have my grip on him. So as he tries to stand up, I actually scoot in underneath him, and I'm going to execute the ashigarami with my left leg. So I go for tomonagi, but I miss it. And he tries to stand up, I slide in real close. So my right foot is still on his hip, same place it was when I tried to throw tomonagi, but now my hip is really deep. It's here, right beside his heel, his calf muscle. So this leg is going to wrap outside and across the front of his body, just like that. And here's where we want to be really careful. We don't want to just clamp down and bend his knee sideways and execute a knee lock. So my right foot is going to come off of his hip, going to go to his right thigh. I like to pull the person forward and then just lift and take them down. Now from here we could execute knee locks, heel hooks, things like that. But from a judo perspective, we would want to unhook and then just start to attack. Maybe take his back, go for chokes, go for arm bars. Let's just kind of look at that from this side for just a second. We'll just kind of get back into that position here, here. So we swing the leg around here, and this right foot, it was here on his hip. I'm going to drop it down here to his thigh. And I find it makes a big difference. Instead of letting him be flat and heavy and me just trying to push his leg, I'm going to instead pull him forward. And that really creates an off balance. There's very little weight now on this foot. And that makes it easy for me to push that out from under him like that. All right, so that's ashigarami from a failed tomonagi. Next one is going to be a cartwheel or round off versus tomonagi. So our opponent actually tries to throw tomonagi, and they only have control of one arm, not both. So that leaves us with a free arm. And in some cases, we can actually get our other hand free as well, get both hands down, execute a turnout, cartwheel, round off. Understand that these don't have to be picture perfect gymnastics cartwheels or round offs. We just want you to be able to control yourself and not land on your back, not get thrown for ippon. So if you're not particularly gymnastic and flexible and nimble, don't sweat this a whole lot. Obviously practice it, work on it as much as you can, but it doesn't have to look like you're trying for the Olympic gymnastics team. Just don't land on your back. That's what we're talking about. So I'm going to try for a standard tomonagi, throwing Sensei John right over my head, and he's going to do either a cartwheel, a round off, just not land on his back. So my right foot comes up, I swing through, just like that. Now, of course, if we could execute a good round off, that puts us in prime position. As you can see, he could come right in here to a kami shiho gatami and put me in a world of hurt. So, cartwheel or round off versus tomonagi. Now, in addition, remember, that you will need to show each throw in this set to a pin of your choice. We're not going to demonstrate this on the video. It's pretty self-explanatory, but again, if you need help or assistance, always ask one of the instructors and we'll be happy to give you some pointers and help you out. All right, that's your counters, defenses, and combinations for semester 3. All right, we are going to go over some of the groundwork in semester 3 of our adult judo curriculum. We're going to cover the pins, some chokes, and some joint locks for you guys. So let's start off with our pinning techniques. This semester we're focusing on 2 in particular. First one is uki gatami. This would be the floating hold. It's also sometimes called the knee on belly for obvious reasons you're going to see. So with this technique, I'm going to have my knee on my opponent's stomach or belly, and I'm going to have my other foot up, and I want to be controlling his lapel, and in this case grabbing here to pull up on his arm. So I would be pushing downward with my knee, lifting up to put him in a lot of pressure or pain. Now there's infinite numbers of combinations here. Another real popular grip is for the lower hand to just grab his pants at the hip, and this hand to grab his collar right behind his head and neck and use that to pull up. But at any rate, we're going to have the knee here and we're lifting up and putting him in a lot of pain, a lot of pressure. And this is a recognized pin in judo, ukigatami, the floating hold. Our next one is kuzure yoko shiho gatami. It's the modified side locking 4-corner hold. When we say modified, that opens the door to lots of different variations. In particular, the one we're covering or really focusing on this semester involves me using my lower hand to control his opposite leg by gripping the pant leg, shoving it down and out, making it hard for him to bridge, hard for him to get his leg up to do a choke or an escape, or hard to recover his guard. So we'll see it from here, and then we'll turn sideways. So just like our regular yoko shiho gatami, my knees are close to his body, chest to chest. My upper arm is behind his head here. Now I might be grabbing his lapel and collar. I might reach underneath and hug into his armpit, but I want to have good tight control of his body. My lower hand is going to reach down, grab his pants right by his knee, and I'm going to shove that down and out and try to pin it to the ground. So rotate sideways. For a standard yoko shiho gatami, we would go deep, deep under the hip and try to control him here. For this particular modified version, I'm going to grab and shove this down and out. Again, this is just one way or one type of modified side locking 4-corner hold. Anything I'm doing outside of that standard textbook yoko shiho could be considered a kuzure yoko shiho, a modified side locking 4-corner hold. All right, let's cover some choking techniques. Got several good chokes in this semester. We have a technique called okiri iri jame for our advanced students. This is the sliding or assisting choke, lapel choke, and this time we're doing a variation or version that's commonly called the clock choke in a lot of grappling circles or disciplines. So I'm going to show okiri iri jame first from a seated rear position so you see the mechanics and the hand placement. When we do the clock choke version, understand everything is the same as far as the hand positions and the mechanics of the choke. It's just my opponent will be on his hands and knees, and so I'll execute it from the side. So for this technique, if I were executing it from the rear, I would open this lapel, my right arm would go over his shoulder, thumb would go inside, nice and deep, and then this arm is underneath his armpit. It reaches across, grabs the opposite lapel, thumb inside. This hand is going to pull downward toward his belt. This hand is going to pull around. So I'm here, I pull down and around and up. And it's a very nasty, very effective choke. So that would be okiri iri jame, sliding lapel choke. So if we were to now see a partner or an uke, an opponent, who was turtled up here, if I were sort of riding his hip on this side, if I could get my right hand over his shoulder with my thumb inside. Now, this could happen very easily. Maybe he went for a drop knee shoulder throw, and I had this lapel grip, and I managed to sprawl to the side, and his throw failed. And so now he's turtling up as a defense. So I would just get my thumb a little higher. This hand goes across his back, under his armpit, and I'm grabbing the opposite lapel. So if he sits up, you'll see the hand placement is exactly the same as it was from the seated rear mount. Same thing, it's just now he's here. So to execute this choke, I'll again pull around with the right hand, pull down with the left, but my legs are going to sit through. And I'll start to walk my legs around his body. So the legs sort of move like the two hands on a clock, and that's why most people call it the clock choke. So we're here, and we're here. I'm going to sit through and start to walk as I execute my choke. Now, depending on how tight you choke and how tight and how well placed your thumb is, you may not have to walk very far at all. If it's particularly loose, you may have to walk all the way up to his head or even past his head. If you get good hand placement, usually the sit through, maybe one step. That's all it takes, and it's done. Our next choke is Jikoku Jime. This is also for our advanced students. This is the held choke or held strangle. It's also sometimes called a crucifix. You could be doing it with or without the choke. So we typically do it and practice it versus an opponent who has turtled up, but you could also get this position from the rear mount. So my opponent is turtled up here. I'm going to approach and I'm going to use my upper knee, the one closest to his head, and I'm going to start to drive it past his shoulder. And what I kind of want to do here is make him think I'm going to set up like a senkaku type choke. I'm hoping that he grabs my arm. Now it's okay if he doesn't, because I could also just take my leg here and I could capture his arm thusly. So I want to have control of this arm with my legs, and then I'm going to actually take a roll across, but as I do, I want to hook his opposite arm with this hand. So you can use this hand if you need to help you push up, roll, and hook here. Control, you can grab your own lapel or go behind your head and grab your own neck. This hand now comes around, grabs his lapel, and I execute the choking technique there. So let's just kind of rotate around and face the camera. So my position is here, here, and here. Again, grab my own lapel or go behind my neck, reach up underneath his neck, and perform the choke like that. You could also try to obtain this lapel positioning with your thumb prior to executing your roll. That in some cases is more effective, or I should say easier to get. But once you've rolled him over, if you don't have it, you have both his arms tied up. So the only thing he has to fight you with is his chin. It's not usually that hard to drive underneath and get your thumb inside. So Jikoku Jime, held choke or held strangle. Our last one for our advanced players is Mukuzune Jime. This would be a shin or leg choke. In BJJ, it's commonly referred to as Goga Plata. So we'll see this one when I'm on my back and he is in my guard. Again, lots and lots of different ways to set this up. The way I'm going to do it today is I'm going to be controlling his sleeve and the lapel on the same side. And what I want to do is pull this arm to me so that I can bring my leg, my right leg in this case, up and over. And I want my shin and instep here to go right underneath his chin. Then I can reach up, grab the back of his head, pull it forward. I might even grab with both hands to pull forward. Try not to grab the top of his head. Try to grab the base of his neck and pull forward in judo situations. It's possible in judo if you did this and you were pulling his head forward, they may call you for neck cranking. But if we grab low here, even his collar, we could execute this choke by not actually putting any pressure forward on the head and neck. So that's your shin choke, Mukuzune Jime, for our advanced players. We've got a couple of really cool joint locks this time. We have a kind of a traditional or classical arm lock or elbow lock called hara-gatame. You don't often see this performed. It's one technique we include because it is effective, but also just kind of to preserve one of the older techniques from older styles of jiu-jitsu, and you see it in Aikido as well. So it's very similar to waki-gatame, the armpit arm lock, but in this case, hara means center, and so it's actually our center. We could translate it and say it's the stomach arm lock, but we're using the center of our body here to execute the technique, and it's done from standing typically. So in this case, perhaps he has a lapel grip, and I would grab here and break his grip. Then I'm going to rotate his arm, so his elbow now is pointing up. Instead of going into waki-gatame though, I'm going to put his wrist into this elbow and cradle it. Then this arm goes across, pointing downward. So I have this position, one up, one down, and his elbow is here in the center of my body. So now I'm going to pull with my arms, but I'm also going to fill my chest and lungs up with air, so I expand. So my center is moving outward, and I'm pulling his elbow inward like this to execute the lock. So Haragatami, the stomach arm lock. Pretty cool technique, again, kind of an older classical technique. Next is Kota Haneri. This is one of our wrist locks. Remember, like some other techniques in this semester, this is not legal in judo competitions, even freestyle judo. It can be used in some divisions of BJJ. It's always rank dependent. Maybe you can do wrist locks at blue or at purple. So when we talk about our wrist locks, we have three major ones that we usually work on here or look at. We have Kota Gaishi, which is a wrist reversal. We have Kota Mawashi, which is kind of a wrist fold in. And then we have Kota Haneri. And Haneri takes place when I'm driving his fingers backwards, sort of upward toward his forearm and his elbow. And so that's what we're working on here. And there's a couple of different ways we could do this. From a self-defense perspective, if he either reaches to grab me or maybe even throws a punch at me, if I can intercept that here and here, and I would fold my fingers around the edge of his hand, and I would wrap, fold, and then push upward. And this executed a lot of pressure on his wrist. Pretty easy to break the wrist or dislocate the wrist from this position. From a grappling perspective, maybe we're doing a BJJ or submission wrestling type event. If he grabs my lapel here, I can place my hand on top of his knuckles and just slightly roll his hand. My left hand, the fingers go inside his elbow, and I'm going to just kind of pull it outward and roll it up. So now I'm going to pull his forearm toward me, but my body is going to move and bend forward. And this edge of my hand is focusing that pressure here on his wrist. So in effect, his wrist is getting pushed backwards. So we hold the elbow and then we perform the lock. And this could be done from a standing position or even in a ground grappling position here. It could even be done with him in my guard. If I could trap this and roll it and then sit up like I'm doing a crunch, I could execute Kota Haneri from there. It's all the same movement. It's all the same movement. It's me driving the wrist in that direction. That's what we're doing right here. So Kota Haneri, that's a wrist lock. All right, so Ashigarami to knee lock and heel hook. We kind of touched on this a little bit earlier in this video. We had a combination that was a failed Tomonagi to Ashigarami, the leg entanglement, which said that was in Katami no Kata. This technique, in this case, is going to end in either a knee lock and also possibly a heel hook. Heel hooks are almost never legal. Very seldom do you see them legal in any grappling rule set. They're definitely not legal in judo, and knee locks aren't either. These are techniques we're including for our advanced players just to be sure you have a more well-rounded idea or picture of grappling. We don't want you to be completely foreign to some techniques or ignorant to some techniques just because of a particular rule set. We want you to be well-informed and well-rounded. So in this particular instance, I've gone for that Tomonagi, or maybe I was just guard fighting. Maybe I was on my back and he was standing up. So we're here, I get in real close, I wrap, off balance, and I push it out to the side, here. So we have a pretty good opportunity for a knee lock. If I continue to push my leg across and put pressure on his knee, I can execute there. The heel hook would be me wrapping my armpit around under his heel here, and then curling and twisting like that. For the knee lock to be effective, I would really try to keep a grip on him here so I could pull his body toward me as I pushed my leg out, or I could go here for the heel hook. Again, those are never legal in judo, just techniques we want you to be aware of. Our last one for this set is a knee wedge, also called a calf crush or calf crusher. And the way we're going to do it today, we have our opponent in our guard. Lots of different ways we might get here, but we'll start from guard. So I've got my opponent in my guard, and what I want to do is lift his arm and then shoot up. A technique I've heard some people refer to as a T-bow or T-bow. I just call it a duck through sit-up. So I sit up, I pull this arm across my body and lock it to me real tightly. And then I'm going to reach across and grab his lat muscles to hold him tight. I want the skinniest part of my lower leg here, right above my heel, above my ankle, to go into his knee here. Once I have that, I'll release, grab, and I'll pull his leg toward me. So what's happening here, my leg is here, and I'm grabbing his leg, pulling it forward. So my shin is creating a wedge in his knee joint. Most people tap because of the pain in their calf and their inner back thigh, but if they don't tap and we pull hard enough, this will actually separate the knee joint. So I grab and I pull. Now it's really important to notice I'm keeping this arm here, controlling him. I don't want him able to sit up and then start coming back at me. So once I've executed this hold, I'm going to hold him tightly and then lock him here. All right, so that's our calf crush or knee wedge from the guard. So those are your chokes, joint locks for this semester. Most of that material for advanced ranks, but there are some cool techniques in there for the novice ranks as well. All right, we're now going to go over the miscellaneous mat work material for semester 3 of our adult judo curriculum. So, first technique is an elbow wedge or bicep crush, depending on what you want to call it, same technique. When we're trying to do jujigatami, our opponent's on his back, we're trying to get the arm out straight, but he has doubled up and he's preventing us from getting his arm straight. So I'll have Sensei John just lay down with his head that way to start with, and I'll just get into that position. So, multitude of ways we could end up here, but this is where we've ended up, okay? And he has doubled up. He's protecting himself. And so I've got my lower arm, in this case, through, and I've tried to pull, and I've put my heel in, tried a lot of different tricks, but nothing's working. Remember, in judo, even in freestyle judo, there's a limited amount of time to work from this position before the referee will call mate. Now in freestyle judo, we will give a lot more time than you will get in Olympic or IJF judo, but if you're not making progress, eventually you will get stopped and we'll stand you back up. So you don't want to give up the ground you've gained by getting here. You could finish the match from here instead of having to stand up and fight more, get more exhausted, possibly make a mistake and get thrown. So in this semester, we're looking at just two things. There's a lot of others, but two things you might be able to do when this happens. So I was trying to break it and I couldn't. For the wedge or the crush, I want to get the skinniest part of my wrist, the part right before the actual joint. And I want to pull that into his elbow as tightly as I can. So my wrist is sideways, and so I pull it in real hard like this, and I'm keeping constant pressure on it. My other hand reaches over and I grab the top of his arm. Now this could be this arm if it's on top, it could be this arm, the one that he's trying to keep bent, or whatever, but I want it to be on top. And then I will grab my own wrist or forearm. So essentially I'm here and here, kind of a figure 4 type position, here and here. To execute the lock, I'm going to pull toward me and upward, and I'm also going to push downward. So I'm going to use both of these hands to push down on his arm. So, effectively, all the way up. So effectively, I'm using my hands to push downward like this, but my wrist is here. So the lock is happening like this. Okay, so he's locked up, I'm in position, I grab, pull towards yourself and up as strongly as you can, and then push downward. And it really hurts. Most people, again, will tap from the pain on their bicep or the pain on their forearm, but if they don't tap in time and we keep applying pressure, this will eventually separate his elbow joint. Now, if you're trying to execute and you're giving it everything you got and it's just not having enough effect, you do have an option of taking your lower leg, bringing it up, and then grabbing it with your hand. Now you've got two hands and your leg all pressing downward, and that can make this really nasty. I've also seen some people go as far as doing a leg triangle here and using that to apply pressure. So there's multiple ways to apply additional pressure here for that joint lock. We often call that an elbow wedge. It's also very commonly called a bicep crush. Our next technique is also from this position, so we're just going to stay here. So in this case, he's doubled up, tried to break it. Maybe I tried to wedge. That didn't work either. I know the referee's going to stand us up really soon if I don't make something happen. So the next technique, we use the belt of our opponent as part of our weapon. I call it the belt trap to tate shihogatami. So I'm going to keep applying pressure, so he has to stay doubled up, and the more he's doubled up, the better in this case. If his two arms are across each other, that's great. We want that. I'm going to take my lower leg and slide it down to his waist, and my upper arm reaches, and I grab the tip of his belt, and I pull it sharply. Then I pull it across both arms, and I feed it to this hand. Then this hand pulls through. Now I'm not going to do this as hard as I can to hurt my uke in demonstration purposes, but when you do this for real, you would pull as hard as you can. You want to really tie his arms together, kind of shackle him together. So I pull strongly, and that traps both of his arms. Now, my lower leg can hook his thigh, my upper arm can go here, and I can sit up and go into a modified tate shihogatami right here. There's no reason to let go of this. I'll just hold on to it until either I get my 4 points for my pin, or depending on my division, I can hold 25 seconds, maybe win the match. So we just would use that to make our pin that much stronger. All right, that's our belt trap to tate shiho. Kind of a nice sneaky little move. All right, we have a few positions here, a few techniques for our advanced players. This first one takes place from what's called the de la hiva, outside de la hiva. It could also be called in judo kind of an ashigarami, or a leg entanglement. So in this instance, we're going to start with me on my back, my opponent standing up, kind of a high open guard. This is what we typically refer to it as. We'll show this from two different angles. So I'm going to have a 2-on-1 grip, meaning I'm holding the sleeve and the lapel, two hands gripping one side here. I've got my right foot on his hip. I'm sitting kind of on his heel and his foot, and this left leg is wrapped around his knee, and I've got the foot inside the thigh. There's a lot of different variations here. Some people like to put the foot all the way across the other leg. That's fine. I like to wrap the foot to the inside of the thigh on the same side. My right foot that's on his hip, I'm going to use it the same way we did earlier when we were demonstrating ashigarami. I'm going to pull him forward to take some weight off his back leg, and then my foot is going to float from his hip down to his thigh. And I'm going to try to push him backwards and down. Now what I really want to do is I want to break him down and make him fall. But sometimes he recovers by pushing forward. And that's when we can execute this balloon sweep. It's really a tomonagi, or circle throw, like we saw earlier in this video. So my foot was on his thigh to push him backwards. When I feel him push forward, it goes back to his hip. I lift, and I just throw him over. And I try to follow it if I can. So let's see that with my head toward the camera. I want you to see the foot placement there. So, 2-on-1 grip, foot on his hip, onto his foot, and I'm wrapping around outside and hooking him. So, I go to the thigh, I push him backwards. He steps forward, I float. I can also take him to the side. So, once you make the lift, you can go to the side, straight over your head, whatever direction you like. It's going to be considered a guard sweep, and if I can follow it, then I could easily obtain a pin. The key to making that one work is not to necessarily try to lift his full dead weight, but to push him backwards, get a reaction, get him to try to step back forward. And as he does, it becomes much easier to lift him with your foot on his hip. Next technique is going to be our banana split versus the turtle. This is not legal in judo. It would be legal in some jiu-jitsu matches or some submission wrestling events. Another technique where I just want to be sure my advanced guys and gals kind of are exposed to at least some of these techniques, so you're not completely oblivious to them. So, in this case, I'm going to have Sensei John turtle up with his head toward the back wall. And essentially what I need to do is get my upper leg through his hip and then wrapped around here. I'm not as flexible as I used to be, so I have to kind of cheat a little bit. I'll shoot my leg through, and then I have to reach and grab it and pull it into position here. So it's almost like I'm going to execute that wedge or crush to his calf like I did earlier. But in this case, instead of doing that, I'm going to reach and grab the opposite leg and just fall backwards and pull him to me. So I fall, and I pull him to here. My other foot goes here to double up. I'm going to push his leg that way, and I'm going to pull this leg this way, like this. And this puts a lot of pressure on the muscles here, those groin muscles and hamstring muscles, by spreading them out like a banana split is called, because he's almost doing a full split. There's a lot of different ways that you could get that leg position. He might be turtled up, and I might even start to attack from the back here. So I might set him forward here, just like this, then turn, then roll, and now I've got the same position. So, again, a nasty, sneaky little trick, not legal in judo, but fun to play with and maybe use on your buddies when you're having some fun randori in class. All right, our last technique of this set is the wrist lock pass versus half guard. Another technique that's not legal in judo, but good for advanced players to know. This happens to be one of my very favorite techniques to utilize. So he's on his back, and I am stuck here in his half guard. This is probably, other than being on bottom and being pinned, this is probably one of my least favorite positions. I do not like being in the half guard. I'd rather be in the full guard than half guard. Just a personal thing for me. I don't like this position. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and put some downward pressure on him, and I like to bring my left arm around and sort of be controlling his head and shoulders with it. My other knee is based out wide, so he can't roll me easily. And so what I want to do now is start to use my knee that's trapped and try to execute a slice. So I might push his legs over a bit and then start slicing. And when we do that, it's almost uncontrollable by the person on bottom. They feel it, so they want to bring their hand here and they want to stop it. And that makes sense. He wants to shove my knee back into half guard, right? So I'm going to use that to my advantage. When I feel him touch my knee, I grab his wrist and I shove it to the ground. Then I slice a little further, put my knee right on his forearm, and then I roll his wrist backwards right here. So this is a particularly sneaky, nasty little wrist lock. I've used it quite a bit in BJJ and rolling and things like that. With any wrist lock, you want to be very careful. Execute it slowly. It's very easy to dislocate or break someone's wrist. So never just apply it hard and fast. Always go slow and easy. Remember, these are not legal in judo. And if you want to use these in your judo ground randori, just for practice, you need to make sure that your partner, your uke, your opponent, is on board with that. You guys both understand that, hey, we can try for wrist locks, and just look out for each other. All right, so that's our miscellaneous mat work for this semester. All right, we are going to now cover the 4 self-defense techniques that are in this semester of our adult judo curriculum. This is semester 3 of our adult judo curriculum. All 4 of these techniques take place when we are on our back and our opponent, in this case the bad guy, is on top of us, actually sitting on us in the full mount, and they're trying to do different things to us. What you're going to see here is a lot of similarity between what we do to escape the position. And for self-defense, that's on purpose. We only want to have a small number of things that we practice over and over that work in a wide variety of situations. So you will see a slightly different attack initially from the attacker. My defenses are going to be almost identical. I may have to make a small difference initially to actually counteract or trap a hand, but from that point forward, it's all the same. So that makes it easy to learn, easy to remember. So let's get to it. This first technique, I'm on my back, bad guy's on top of me, he's choking me with 2 hands. So it doesn't matter which side I bridge and roll to, I just need to pick. And remember, just like in regular grappling on the ground, if I'm going to sweep him or roll him in one direction, I have to trap the arm on that side. So if I wanted to bridge and roll that way, then this hand would reach across and it would grab his wrist and trap it to my body. This hand is going to reach and grab behind his elbow, right on his tricep. And we do that because in a self-defense situation, you probably wouldn't have on sleeves. And if I just grab him here, he might have an easier time sliding his arm away from me and escaping. So I'm going to trap it here and here. My left foot, I'll step it up and trap his foot on that side. My right foot comes close to my body. Now I bridge forward and then to the angle. Now once I'm here, I'm going to hide my face from him so he can't punch me in the head and face. And then I'll pass his guard here, and I take the full mount. And when we practice in class now, I would give him the choke so he could practice that same technique. Now, it's important too to understand, I'm going to have him take the mount Let's do it from right here. I want to make one point about the legs. So sometimes your opponent will do a leg entanglement or a grapevine, like we see here. So my legs are kind of tied up. So if that happens, this leg is already trapping. I just slide it forward, and now he can't use that leg to post with. So that's mission accomplished. But I need to be able to bridge with this one. It's hard to do that if he's got my leg kind of stretched out and trapped. I can't really bridge effectively. So if we find that happening, what we want to do is use that foot. We want to kick straight up to the sky and then stomp back down real close to our body. So I'll kick up, stomp down, and then I would execute my bridge. Has to happen quickly before he reestablishes the grapevine. Okay, so second technique, he's on top of me in the full mount, and this time places his forearm across my chest. All right, so same thing, but now in this case, he has kind of made a decision for me. If he's choking me with this arm, I'm going to go that way. If he were choking me with that arm, I would go that way. So in this case, you have to react based on what he's attacking with. He's attacking you here. So I'm going to grab the wrist, I'm going to grab here on his elbow and bicep tricep. I'm going to slightly pull that down so he's not choking me. Then I'm going to tuck my chin in so he can't reestablish his choke. I'll slide this foot up to trap his foot. If he's got a grapevine on me, I'll kick, stomp, bridge, roll, hide from him, pass the guard, and then I'll take the top mount, and then I would give him the same attack so we could practice in turn. All right, our third one, same position, but this time he's put his head behind my head. So again, he has made a decision for me. If it's this arm, then I'm going to go that way. If he trapped his other arm behind my head, I would go in that direction. So whichever arm he has behind your head, that's the one you're going to trap. So he's got this one. I'm going to sort of pretend, it's almost like I'm combing my hair. You can imagine brushing the hair back out of your eyes. What I want to do is trap his arm behind my head so he can't put it out and post with it. So I trap his arm here and I hold it tight. I trap his foot by sliding mine up. If he has a grapevine, I kick, stomp. Remember, your bridges are not here. They're always to this angle. I'm going to lift him forward first, then take the roll. I'm going to hide from him here. I'm going to pass his guard. Take the full mount, then I'll give him same attack, and we can repeat the technique. All right, our fourth and final one for this semester. It's a slightly different attack. So he's on top of me, and he's actually pinned my hands down beside me. So this is a pretty helpless feeling. It's a pretty common attack. You'd see maybe a male aggressor attacking a female victim. So it's a pretty helpless feeling here. I'm not maybe strong enough to just overpower him and pull free. So I got to use a little bit of trickery here. I need him to move the hands for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to perform two actions as close together as possible. I'm going to use my legs to bridge him forward strong and fast, and at the same time I'm going to jerk my elbows downward. And I have to really stress that it's not a pull down, it needs to be a snap, a jerking motion. What I want to happen is I want him to feel like he's falling forward, like he's going to do a face plant on the concrete. So he actually lets go with his hands to catch himself. And then we can finish our escape. So we're here, I get my feet ready, I make a sharp bridge forward, and I snap down. Here. And he catches himself so he doesn't fall. Now I don't want to give him time to just recover, so I'm going to reach up, I'm going to grab his shoulders. I want to pull him down, me up. And it doesn't matter the percentage of which, I just need to get further up his body. So I grab and slide. Now I can either trap his elbow from the outside here, or I can swim through and hug it to my body here. I find that this one feels stronger, but it's a little harder to get. So you may want to practice both of these. Now again, I'll trap the foot. If he had a grapevine, I would kick to free it. This hand is free, so I'm going to drive with it in the direction I want to go. Now, an important safety tip before you practice this, when your partner, you want to be sure that he has his wrist turned over so he's hugging your shoulder. If he has his hand down on the mat and you bridge in that direction, you're going to execute a pretty nasty wrist lock on him. It's probably going to hurt his wrist, might even break it. So make sure your partner turns over their wrist and kind of hugs your shoulder. If he were an attacker, obviously, I don't care. I want to hurt his wrist, so I'm not going to stop and make sure he fixes it. I'll just do my technique. So we trap, we bridge, and push. And again, our finish is the same. I wouldn't stay here and let him start punching me and eye gouging me and stuff like that. I'm going to hide from him here. I'm going to pass the guard however I want, and then I take the full mount. And of course, then I could give my partner the same attack so he could practice the technique. So, that about wraps it up. Those are your self-defense techniques for semester 3 of our adult judo curriculum.